Right, press record, press share. There we go, guys. Okay, right, we'll resume. Okay, everybody. So hopefully you can all see that. So this is looking at how spoken language can change in use. So for example, context one, a group of teenagers standing outside college chatting about what they did at the weekend, or context two, one of the same group going for an interview for a full-time job as a teaching assistant to start after he or she finishes work. Okay, so just tell me, guys, in the chat, what kind of challenges does this pose for you in terms of you're trying to develop the student speaking skills, but there's lots of their informal language coming in to your sessions in terms of how they're doing some of your speaking activities, how they take part in discussions, conversations, debates, etc. And you want them to now move to kind of shift paradigms almost, so they're kind of using more formal English. So it's more appropriate to the context. Tell me about the challenges of that, trying to work within the paradigms here, okay? Any thoughts there? Street talk crossover. That's interesting, Dorette. That's in. So you do, I mean, for example, one of the things that I sometimes do is I'd present some script which is using very colloquial language or very informal, and I get students to translate it, and I give them some formal language vocabulary for them to be able to do the translation. So teaching informal slang language, yeah, very good, fantastic, yeah. So really getting students to compare, absolutely compare what they're doing. They complain as they feel that it should be the one language. Yeah, that's true. Teach them, Shirley's saying, teach them that we use language differently according to setting. It's a question of letting them know their normal language is fine. Absolutely, and that's fine in terms of using the English language in an appropriate way, but also where we need to use it for certain situations, then this is where it becomes really important. I mean, I've done little activities whereby I might give little snippets of little conversations. I'll say, well, which one do you think is appropriate, you know, outside college, with your friends, with your manager, with your teacher, with your parent, or et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And then get them to do the matching activity. Yeah, showing them videos. Oh, and I wanted to mention as well, have you all come across some really good videos on the BBC Bite-Size Functional Skills English? So BBC Bite-Size have got a functional skills section, and there's some really good videos that help to develop the student speaking and listening skills. You know, please have a look at those because they're really, really important too. Yeah, we're getting some good stuff. Yeah, you know, like matching activities. I mean, I've done this on interactive whiteboards where I have all my little statements, which is slang, and then I've got how it can be translated into more formal English to help with their presentations for their speaking and listening, and get them to match, and then get the learners to try to use some of those utterances in the actual kind of class itself. I'm just going to go through a couple of other activities that I found useful. Have some of you used the back-to-back vocabulary exercise? Back-to-back. Basically, what you do is, well, this only works with face-to-face, by the way. It's not going to work, obviously, you know, with digital formats. But in a classroom, you get students to work in pairs, and then they're sitting back-to-back to each other. And then basically, one student is facing the whiteboard and the other one is not. And the one facing the whiteboard, what I would do in this situation is I would then present a list of words that are colloquial words, okay? But then on the side, I will then put their formal translations. And what I would do is I would get the student to then describe the slang word using formal English, but then the other person has to guess what the slang word is. But you can also flip it. You can get the other student to change places. They then have to read out the slang word, and the other person has to then explain what it actually is, okay? So the back-to-back is really, really good. Also, guys, have any of you used Funk's questions? for promoting speaking and listening. Thunks questions are basically like multiple choice questions, but then you frame them verbally rather than give it give it to them as a handout or a worksheet. So you said, so basically with a Thunks question, you said, well, okay, would you choose A? Would you choose B? For example, if you were in an interview, how would you greet the interviewer? Would you say, "Hi, mate," or would you say, "Good afternoon, Mr. Brown"? Things like that, little things like that, where you're giving them an option and they have to choose. Now that would be using Thunk style question. And with Thunk style questions, the students also have the security of knowing that actually what it is with the Thunk style question is that they have the security of knowing that one answer is correct. So they have to reason with all the other options and then hopefully noting which is the distractor. So I think that is a really good one for speaking. And with the Thunk style question, you can incorporate your questioning around grammar. How would we say this in the past? Would we say it like this? Would we say it like that? And you can give one option, which is future time, one which is present. So you could do that. You could do a bit of grammar practice in a spoken way. There's lots of different things that you could do there with the use of Thunks questioning, and you could target individual students as well. All right. Let me think of another one as well. Have any of you heard of the Feynman technique for developing speaking? The Feynman technique. Anybody come across that? Okay, with the Feynman technique, it comes from Richard Feynman, who was a famous American physicist, and he came up with a very simple model that can really, well, it's basically using the power of the student's speech to improve their learning. So this could actually have an effect on improving their reading and writing through speaking. So essentially what you do is you do your teaching, okay, whatever you're teaching them, you cover that. So you cover your content. You get your learners to make notes and write down the key points from your teaching. The teaching could be done through a handout, or it could be done digitally, or you could verbally explain things, whatever it might be. And then you get the learners to make notes. Now, this is where the power happens. The learners then put their notes to one side. They have to verbally recount what they understood from your teaching. They have to go back, and even if they have to look at their notes initially, they then put their notes away, then they have to verbally recount back. Okay. And then at this point, the teacher then says, okay, either they have got it, fine, and I'll do more advanced work with them, but then they probably need more help. Then I'm going to ask them to go back to the notes, or I may have to reteach things. Okay. So the Feynman technique really gets the learners to use their speaking skills to help them with their learning in general. And that's very powerful. And if you know, and this is something that I always do with improving student speaking skills, okay? I will know that a lot of my students are using lots of informal language, lots of text language, slang, street language, however wish you want to call it. That's okay. That's who they are. That's fine. Not a problem. However, as a language teacher, I've got a duty and responsibility to introduce them to alternative language choices that are going to serve them well for the exam in terms of looking favorably, in the eyes of the examiner, the assessor, and also serve them well when they are then, working, they're in jobs, they're starting businesses, whatever it might be, or just for them as individuals, just in terms of improving their powers of expression, to have more variety. What I would be doing is I would be exposing them to words, individual words, semi-fixed expressions. I'd be giving them fixed expressions. I'd be giving them utterances that are more commonplace in formal situations. So I would be pipelining these language points in. So learners are exposed to it, and then they then have the choice to use it. And even if I have to do directed pair work with them, where I'm asking them to do a conversation, but I'll give a list of words, formal English words, that student A has to use in the conversation, and then I have to give another one for student B to use in the conversation. So I'm now giving them controlled practice with their speaking, but they've got to be guided by the words I give them. And the words are not slang words. They're formal English words. They are, so I would be giving them, aspects of lexicology which is more appropriate for them getting good marks for their functional skills, level entry 3, level 1, level 2, or for them to be able to, you know, to be looked at favorably if they were using their spoken English skills in the workplace. Okay, so that's so important to be able to do that with students. Okay, I'm just going to now nip into, was there anything else I wanted to mention? So there was the Feynman technique, there was the back-to-back technique, there was the, I used the Feynman technique, the back-to-back, the Feynman technique was the other one as well. Okay, guys, all right. So I'm just going to